Hello, I'm Amy Zawi with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report for Wednesday, February 20th. Our hallowed halls are corrupted. For those of you who are not in the U.S., you may not realize that for decades the Democrat Party in the United States was the stronghold of political power, with many of the Jewish population participating and supporting it and identifying as Democrats. This is likely because the Democrats over the course of the 70s and 80s and into the early 2000s and until this day, seemingly, they are advocates of social welfare programs, government-run social services, and it appears the party of compassion and human rights. This compassion and concern for human rights and services for those who need them in a society is a legitimate concern for many in the Jewish community. I dare say it's also a concern for non-Jews, but that's another discussion. Bill Clinton, for example, was once considered the greatest friend to Israel. He was very much loved by the Israeli population when he was president. What's interesting is that today Donald Trump is very much loved by the Israelis, and recently a group of Jewish leadership put a full-page ad in the New York Times thanking him for his work thus far regarding Israel. But we have a problem in Congress, the result of Trump derangement syndrome, in my opinion. This is the idea that whatever Trump says or does or espouses or talks about or accomplishes, the Dems are going to take the extreme opposite reaction and position, even if it's for topics they originally supported, such as pulling out of foreign conflicts, drawing down the presence in the Middle East, and perhaps issues such as border security, where most elected officials in the Democratic Party who have been there for years are on the record supporting things like walls and barriers and border security. The Democrats used to campaign on those things, but now that Trump has supported some of these ideas, they push back in the opposite direction. But an even scarier issue to this is the freshman class of congressional women who are strutting around the halls of the Capitol, tweeting ill-informed, unreasoned, and even lies, and doing it all with pride and almost no pushback. Anti-Semitism is part and parcel to the identity of some of the women that have taken on power, and they use that, in my opinion, for their power grab. An example is Minnesota's Congresswoman Omar. She has repeatedly posted anti-Jewish and anti-Israel and has supported BDS activities, and she does not try to hide it. She wears it with a badge of honor. But I don't understand why it's accepted, especially since a bipartisan anti-BDS bill has been passed. Moreover, when Omar was initially slated for a Foreign Affairs Committee position, many of her Democrat Congress fellows opposed this appointment. So I think the reason why people are scared of her or unwilling to push back might be because she's a woman and she's a woman of color. Any man, any white man in particular, who posted similar demeaning ideas about women or any other minority group would have been publicly flogged or symbolically flogged and stripped of their committee appointments. And I use the example of Congressman King from New York. But a woman of color, well, it seems that she has carte blanche to espouse hate and anti-Semitism, and when she was asked how she responds to the backlash, she claimed it was exciting. It took Nancy Pelosi to literally pull rank and force her to apologize for her latest anti-Semitic tweet, noting that America's government and support for Israel were based on the money that it received from political action committees, and she named AIPAC as one. She was forced to apologize via Twitter, and in her apology she claimed it was unequivocal, and then went on to say that AIPAC was one of the reasons she made the tweet. So, why is it that the Jews and Israel are the group that we all seem to be able to hate and make fun of or demean or lie about, and it's somehow accepted? A double standard is openly applied to Jewish people, and a double standard in judgment when examining people who tirade against Israel and Jewish people. This is so blatant and obvious, I do not understand why it is tolerated amongst the halls of our government. Recently, I've been watching a network I discovered on my FiOS station, and it's called the AHC, American Heroes Channel. They do series of educational programs that are docudramas, and they're very riveting, and they examine various points of history. Last week they had an evening on Nazi fugitives, and in these episodes, unsung heroes in Europe, in South America, and in America, in journalism circles, regular housewives, people of Jewish ancestry, Holocaust survivors, non-Jews, all were working together to hunt down anti-Semites, particularly Nazis, who took their ideas to the most logical conclusion in the 1940s, and that we call the Holocaust. This was a state-sponsored, systemic, legal, and encouraged, and accepted in the end by the people, form of anti-Semitism. So let's get back to Omar. Since she made her mandated social media apology, noting that she actually didn't mean to offend anyone, I always have to ask people who tweet cryptic, snide comments, how can you mean you don't want to offend anybody? That's the reason you made the tweet to begin with. If you don't want to offend anyone, post a weather report. Although someone will probably get offended with that too. But in her apology that many believe Pelosi coerced, and in her unequivocal apology, she then names AIPAC as one of the organizations that's wrong with America. We now discover through a Jerusalem Post report that she is slated to speak at a February 23rd dinner in Florida for the Islamic Relief USA Fund. And along with her at this dinner is a Yusuf Abdullah who praises and advocates violence against Jews. You can find his ranting and blog posts cataloged in the Middle East Forum Islamist Watch blog. Now you can remember that I mentioned that Florida is noted as to be a great friend of Israel under their new governor. I would suggest the governor there think about how he can disavow this dinner from being held in his state. Well, keep in mind that the Swedish government put Islamic Relief on a watch list, noting its ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Tunisian government alleges that the relief fund funds jihadists on the Libyan border. Omar, my dear, why won't you list these folks in your tirade against lobbyists who are evil and undermine what you think America is? Oh, and several congressional members have already initiated investigations of Islamic Relief USA through the FBI and the IRS. So while Omar did make her apology tweet, it seems inadequate since she did not remove herself from the dinner nor mention the organization in her lists of lobbies that are evil. President Trump noted publicly at his El Paso event last week that her original post was intolerable and her apology inadequate. Mark Levin, noted radio host and former Supreme Court clerk, posted an article on the systemic problem she represents in the Democratic Party. And Honest Reporting sent Omar an open letter inviting her to Israel to see for herself the reality of what Israel is and who the people are. And may I say that on that trip she could run next door to the neighboring countries and see how her sisters are being treated. Now it's interesting that once the story broke from the Jerusalem Post that Omar is going to be at this event in Florida along with Abdullah, the staff of Omar quickly backtracked and said Abdullah's name should not have been on the collateral and marketing material for that event, and that this was a clerical error, and that he is not going to be speaking with Omar that evening. However, they also said that the reason Abdullah's name was on there is because he had spoken at a previous event and his name was in the template. Well, this all just seems a little shady to me. So clearly it appears that they pulled Abdullah from the dinner in an effort to protect Omar. However, I think Omar should retract herself from the entire dinner event, but that's just me. If you want to compare AIPAC's work and its lobbying efforts and its track record of its finances with CARE and Islamic Relief USA, I would be happy to have that study and sit with Omar and review it so that she can account for her words. Let's also keep in mind that Virginia Congressman Donnelly defended Omar, noting that she is just a freshman, as if her age somehow meant she was allowed to be hateful and ignorant. I'm not sure what's going on in Virginia, but in the 86th delegate district, and this is a state level election, they're having a special election on February 19th to fill that seat. This area includes parts of Fairfax County. There's one candidate named Ibrahim Samira who has posted on his social media clearly anti-Semitic sentiments, including, quote, giving money to Israel is worse than giving money to the KKK. Now, Samira claims that these were 5-year-old posts, and that's not who he is right now, and those were while he was in college. However, I am really disappointed that college students are allowed with impunity or with verbal apologies to gloss over their hateful origins as if we are to assume they've changed in as little as 5 years. The man running against Samira in that district is Air Force vet Greg Nelson, and he does not buy these apologies and his claims. And he says that this type of hate is not acceptable in our government. I do say that most of these anti-Semitic tweets by various Democrats and their positions being held either noted on social media posts or through video taken of their speech and their actions, all they need to do is say, and I'm sorry, and all is forgiven. But I am here to say that the attitude and the sentiment does not just go away. Watch these people carefully. Keep them out of office when you can. If you know people in the 86th Delegate District in Virginia, please tell them to not vote for Samira. Tell them to study the tweets and watch the interviews he has done on local television. Corruption in our hallowed halls is our responsibility to fix because our government is of the people and by the people. Shavua Tov, and have a great week.